Well, I remember clearly when the coronavirus pandemic started, we had some students getting caught in the confusion in China to the extent that some couldn't even afford the means to purchase meals. It was quite a bit of a dicey situation until government took steps to get I think almost all of them back home safely. Also, some few years we had some Ghanaians stranded in Libya. It had to involve the intervention of government and other stakeholders to get involved after several calls by them, both here and of course there. And we were also part of the calls on government to immediately take action to bring them back. You see, it is the responsibility of every government to ensure the safety of its citizens, whether they are home or abroad. And it is the responsibility of the Ghanaian government to ensure that these students are back home safely. We are in a war situation, for crying out loud. And in war situations, things can escalate, things can de-escalate, anything can happen at any time. That is why you're not supposed to take chances.
Okay.
And I was thinking that our research department, which is our external intelligence arm, should have also gathered enough intelligence to indicate whether indeed the Russians would be going in or not. Even if they didn't, Western intelligence, particularly the US, British, French intelligence, pointed to the fact that, look, this is what is being prepared in the kitchen and Putin is likely to attack. So I thought that in the midst of all of this, we should have taken immediate steps to get these students back. Unfortunately, Ghanaian authorities seem to be reactive rather than being proactive when it comes to issues like this.
Right, good time. So take us back and break it down again. What does it really mean, this conflict between Russia and Ukraine? I know that it is underpinned by cultural differences, cultural similarities, political, misunderstanding, and even whether or not these international sanctions, if you break a treaty, would even mean anything to Russia. Just break the whole thing down for a very simple Ghanaian to understand.
Okay, simply put, it is world powers flexing their muscles, unfortunately, in a Ukrainian turf. They say when two elephants are fighting, it is the grass that suffers. Under President Putin, we've seen NATO expansionism, 4 waves of it into Eastern Europe. After the Second World War, Western Europe and the Americans came together and formed NATO.
Right.
And the Russians, together with the former USSR countries, also decided to form the Warsaw Pact. Unfortunately for them, the Warsaw Pact didn't see the light of day. However, NATO continued to date. However, the biggest issue the Russians have is the fact that NATO is creeping slowly into Eastern Europe and getting closer and closer to Russia. So it's just like your enemy being your neighbor. That is what the Russians don't want.
Okay.
If Ukraine joins NATO, what it means is America can bring all its military arsenals to Ukraine because it is part of NATO. And that is a bit of a discomfort to the Russians, because what it also means is the US can stage attacks against Russian interests because they are at their doorsteps. Okay. Their spies can come into Russia and leave Russia and all that. And that is what the Russians don't want. Hence, the need for them to create that buffer by taking over Ukraine, installing a puppet regime, and keeping NATO at an arm's length.
Okay. What's the worst that can happen to Ukraine?
The worst would be for the Russians to take over the whole country. This was supposed to be a limited operation to help Russian-backed separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk side of Ukraine, which the Russians helped the separatists take over after the Russian-backed leader was overthrown in a revolution in Ukraine in 2014. That was the same time they took over Crimea. Okay. However, they've decided to extend it, and we are receiving information that they are a few kilometers outside of Kiev. So what would happen is they would disable, or so to speak, decimate the government in place install a puppet regime, take over the whole country, and establish that buffer they so need between them and Western Europe.
Okay, so